Before we get into today's episode, I want to give a quick shout out to our founding sponsor, Digital Recruiter Podcast, Signature BackOffice Solutions. If you're running a staffing firm, if you're a direct hire and your clients are asking you about contractors and all that, you're trying to figure out where am I going to get funding or payroll taken care of, talk to Signature BackOffice Solutions, signaturebackoffice.com. They've been doing this since 2006. They work with over 400 staffing firms. They'll handle everything, payroll, compliance, workers' comp in all 50 states. You don't have to worry about a thing. Make sure to check out the link in the episode summary. Book a call with my good friend, John Davis, the president CEO of Signature BackOffice Solutions. All right, welcome to a special edition of the Digital Recruiter Podcast. We're going internal with this one, and we're going to start doing a little bit more of this this year because Digital Recruiter has some pretty amazing and team members and doing a ton of work. Some, on LinkedIn that you can see a lot of work behind the scenes, and really want to kind of share more about what we're doing process-wise, what we're working, because it is a team effort over here at Digital Recruiter, from our coaching and training and done-for-you services and everything else. And the person that's been with me since the beginning of Digital Recruiter, Director of Marketing, Content, Lead Coach, whatever, all the titles, Ross Bloomfield. Ross, how you doing, man?
Doing good. Yeah, it's exciting to be here. It's an exciting time, to be promoting a recruiting business on LinkedIn. Things are happening really fast.
Yeah.
In some ways, it's easier than ever. In some ways, it's harder than it's ever been. But it's definitely exciting. So, yeah, stoked to talk about it.
Absolutely. Well, it's amazing that AI, came out, and still not everyone is getting revenue or clients from LinkedIn, even though they're all able to post content way faster. Who would have thought that would be the case, right?
It's almost like your favorite AI tool is not as good at recruiting or talking to business owners who need recruiting, hiring managers who need recruiting as you are. And it shouldn't be used to replace your knowledge of the business that you're running.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's the number one thing everyone thinks of now is just like, all right, I have AI, I'll just, write some content. What I hear all the time is, okay, I'm going to write it and I'm going to have AI clean it up. Right? And you and I are both very opinionated on why that doesn't work. But give us, kind of in your perspective, what you're seeing, because you're coaching recruiters every week on this. You're creating content for digital recruiter clients every week, editing content every week. What are you seeing kind of work and not work in AI and content, and especially LinkedIn right now?
Yeah, I think if I were going to describe what's working in a single word, the word would be specificity. And what I kind of mean by that is when I look at the posts that we post dozens of posts a day for digital recruiter clients, and we get to see the impressions and the engagement across all of them. We've got clients who have a few hundred followers on LinkedIn. They're just getting started. And we've got people who've got tens of thousands. They've been at this for a long time. So we get a lot of information, and they're in every niche. So we get a lot of information about what's working and what's not to get attention from hiring managers and from people who aren't hiring managers. And the thing that I see the most often is the first line is the most important post. I don't think this is news to anybody who's been thinking about this for a while, but the first line is all that somebody's going to see before they click read more. So especially if they're reading on their phone screen, you've got one line. It might not even be the whole line if you're wordy like I am. So you've got to get one key thing in that first line, which is something that is recognizable to your ideal reader. So the types of things in a first line that I see with posts that work well: job titles, salary amounts, percentages, specific things about placements, about roles, about companies, about teams that are relevant to that type of company, and really only to that type of company. They're specific things that could apply to anybody. The phrase I've been using with when talking with our clients is, if this could apply to a dentist office, a pizza parlor, and an elementary school at the same time, it's not specific enough. You've got to give your readers who are scrolling LinkedIn with half their mind on something else something that's going to jump out at them and grab them and be like, this is for you. That's so much more important than being clever. That's so much more important than copying whatever your favorite viral influencer is doing that week. You want to speak directly to your ideal hiring manager and say things that really are relevant to them. Otherwise, it's not enough to be right. I see so often, and it's really frustrating. I see so often recruiters give great advice. They say the right things. They're telling people exactly what they need to hear to solve their hiring problems. But being right is not enough. If the first line of your post doesn't get that hiring manager's attention and say, hey, stop what you're doing. This is for you. This is about you and not every other business, they move on. And it's not enough to be right because people, um, they just don't have room in their heads when they're looking on LinkedIn for just another kind of sort of okay solution. There's so much going on with everybody's business, and there's so much competition. There's so many recruiters reaching out, and so many other service businesses who aren't recruiters, and so many of them aren't actually relevant. So many of them aren't actually helpful. So the hiring managers you're trying to reach, they have blinders on when they're looking at their LinkedIn feed, and if you can't make them understand not only am I right about things, they like hiring managers have no problem believing that you're probably good at what you do, but it's is this the solution for their business? Is this going to actually help them with a very expensive, very frustrating problem that if it doesn't go well will cause them huge headaches down the line? It's got to be specific and relevant to that person. That's the biggest single thing that I've seen influence posts that quote unquote do well, especially doing well in the sense of getting inbound inquiries from hiring managers who actually have buying intent versus posts that might get likes or might just get crickets. Generic and general doesn't tend to drive buying behavior, and specific and relevant to one type of business, one type of person does drive buying behavior.
And to prove the point, I'm going to read the headlines of because we we create the content for dozens of people every month, and so the headlines of the posts with the most impressions, not likes, impressions, because that's what we care about, target impressions, is a 27-year-old will move for an extra 10,000. A 35-year-old senior rep with a kid and mortgage won't. So this recruiter has placing sales reps in his headline as well, right? So you see the headline, and then the headline, the headline of your LinkedIn bio, and then the headline of the post is what the reader will see. So you can also associate it there, which is that got 292,000 impressions, 71,000 impressions. Let's see, comparing this type of firm, and it's a big legal firm. We're talking about associate, 71,000 impressions. None of the 71,000. Firm gave an engineer a senior title and a small bump in pay. His entire resume said geotechnical. That's another one. 2 directors at the same hospital, right? Leadership in healthcare. Strongest person for a senior aerospace manufacturing role, had 30 years of experience. To your point. Now, it's specific for what the post is going to be about. It does not mean that that title has to be the only niche, or whatever, that you recruit or sell for anything, but the post is going to do better if it is specific in that headline, right? And there are ways to obviously make it, more of a hook and have people read more. But to your point, I mean, those are all the ones with the most impressions. And that's, I can figure out the title and or industry in the first line of every single one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the simplest way to do it. I call it a target identifier, and there's a bunch of versions. We go into a bunch of versions in our Digital Recruiter Academy calls. They can be simple, like name their job title, name the industry, or they can be what I call a dog whistle, where you are describing a situation that really would only make sense or be interesting to that type of person, where you don't have to say, hey, this is for the owners of 6 to 7 figure recruiting agencies, but you would describe a situation that would only be relevant and interesting to the owners of 6 to 7 figure recruiting agencies. Those are 2 ways to do it, and it's good to like keep it fresh. But when in doubt, just put the job title in there. You're not going to go wrong with that.
It's I mean, the post has to be has to be good. I guess that's kind of the next question is, what are you seeing work in terms of shorter posts, longer posts, right? That's a question that we get, all the time. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think I was looking at this recently, like analyzing from the last 3 months some of our highest performing posts. We had some that had more than 400 words, which is very long for a LinkedIn post. It's the type of
Yeah.
post you have to scroll multiple times to get through the whole thing. And some of them were 3 lines, more like a tweet. And so there's not really a rule, I don't think, as far as length. My rule is use as many words as you need to make your point and no more. And so if your point can be delivered in 1 line, go ahead and do that. If the reader needs a little more information to kind of get what you're talking about, use as much as you want. People who are interested will read as much as you can give them, as long as it's relevant to them and seems like it's going to help them solve a problem. So rather than like worrying about length, I spend almost all of my time when creating content for clients and with coaching clients to create their own content on digging into the problems. The problems really dictate how long a post needs to be. A complicated problem that takes multiple actions to solve is going to lead to a longer post. Something that's very simple can be a very, very short post. But I think it always just comes back to like, are you demonstrating that you understand what your ideal reader is actually going through? And this is especially important for conversion. Before we turn the mics on, we were talking about the difference between awareness posts and conversion posts. And it's one thing to make people aware of who you are, and it's important to do, but your profile does a lot of that. Actually moving somebody from the decision of making a buying decision, especially something like agency recruiting, which is going to tend to cost 5 figures, maybe more, when the person actually decides to buy it. It's a big decision. They need to have a lot of information about like, how well do you understand this? It's not just, is this going to is this bottle of water going to quench my thirst? Like, that's an easy question to answer. It's a lot more involved in that. You have to show that you understand what's going on in their business. You have to show that you understand why they haven't found this person before. You have to show that they understand the ways that hiring this person might go wrong in their business, the qualities of this person that are hard to suss out from a resume, and how you can connect those things to things that are important to do in a job. I like to think of, a recruiter's intake call or a recruiter's recalibration call, if after they've made some submittals that didn't go on, is the source, like the source material for great content, because it really shows that you're digging in and actually solving the problem. That is what hiring managers need to understand. Knowing that you've made placements successfully in the past is good, but they need to really believe that you can do that for a business like theirs. So spending as much time as possible in your content really focused on the problem and on stories of you solving the problem, and as many stories as possible. Even if you place kind of like high volume roles, it's never gets old. You make a placement every week for a $35 an hour technician. Post that every single week, because that's what the hiring managers who hire those need to hear and understand, to believe that you could do what you're saying you're doing. And if you're posting executives who make $750,000 a year, you do the same thing. You got to post about every aspect, every step of the problem that was relevant to making the right decision. And so that's like the very long-winded answer of length doesn't matter. Focus on the problem does.
Well, it's true, and this is where and sometimes we initially work with people, we get pushback because like, well, I posted about this story already. I was like, well, submitting one candidate through the whole recruiting process and going through the whole recruiting process with one candidate, even with one company, there's about 10, 15 pieces of content potentially in that one story. There's the submittal. There's for the compensation. There's a relocation discussion if that matters. There's the job skills. There's going through the interview process. There's how they feel about the job and the compensation they were submitted before the first interview versus right before the last interview. Then the offer, and then is it, too low? Rarely ever are they too high. Is there a counter offer? Right? The start date, when they start, is the training and the onboarding the way that they thought it was going to be. Like right there, that's one candidate, right? So it's like, well, I talked about that candidate already. There's a million different ways to spin that story. And the client that I'm thinking of that was like, hey, we posted about this story, yesterday, or about this candidate yesterday and today. Yes, but it's two different stories. The one talked about working with multiple agencies, and I think then the other one talked about how that candidate was actually someone that she submitted for another client, and then she, had another role, with another client and then called him again and then submitted for another role. So those are two different things, right? One is offering multiple jobs to one candidate, and then the other one is submitting a candidate when there's like five other agencies working on the same rec. There's completely two different things to your hiring managers. But personally, the recruiter feels like I'm talking about the same thing because it's the same candidate. And this is a
Mm-hmm.
constant theme with content that converts. I think why people give up is because they feel they're talking about the same thing over and over again, right? But it's a different angle. It's a nuanced thing to your prospect. I've talked about automation for 5 years in a row now, I think, and content for 45 years. Right? There's like, but there's so many different things. There's evolution, right? There wasn't AI when I first started posting, wasn't a thing, right? 2022, it wasn't even anything to talk about, but you address things as they come up and as they're almost in the way of your ideal market, right? Or your ideal hiring manager, or your ideal prospect. You have to talk about the things that are in their, that are obstacles in their path. And but then recruiters are just limiting themselves by not getting the most out of all their interactions. That's why we say, hey, if you record all your calls, as many calls as you can right now, and give us the transcripts, because we know how to sort through it, right? We're not telling people, hey, what do you how do you think you are? How do you think you recruit? What do you think your voice is? We're like, no, give us your calls, give us as much as you are in the moment, or just talk to us as stream of consciousness, and then we'll figure it out. The words that you say will reveal kind of what you're about and the stories and the brand identity. And so I think why people are having a lot of success working with us and you is the pressure is gone from having to create the content that converts and taking their work and their words and making it into something that's going to resonate with the market, because it's really hard to do, and it's really easy to fall into the trap of you think you know best, right? It's like the equivalent of the person that builds up the whole business and the website and everything else before they even try to start selling, and then realize no one wants to buy what they've built and they spent months or years on it. It's like, no, you
Yeah.
gotta you gotta market test it, right? And there is a formula for what works and what works over time, right? And there are different ways to plot stories from talking to just one candidate, right? And if you're not thinking in those terms, you're going to be missing out on a ton of gold. And especially because a lot of that stuff sometimes it gets 7 likes, 10 likes, and you know what, those are the ones that end up converting a lot of the
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. I think recruiters limit themselves a lot in terms of I already posted about this, or I only have so many success stories, or even if they're new recruiters, they're like, well, I 80% of the roles I placed last year were kind of the same. So why would I, post about them over and over again? I'm just going to post about them once. But I just want to read out a list. A few weeks ago on a group call, we were doing exactly this exercise, straight taking one success story and kind of mapping out all the different sub problems that were contained within that big picture problem the business has, which is we need to find a certain type of employee. But I just want to read out just to show for volume. And this is just based on one example, one discussion between me and a few recruiters one time. There's we take one problem of a company needs to hire an employee that they can't hire themselves. Well, all the different sub problems might be there's too many or not enough applicants. There are good people getting disqualified by the ATS improperly. The right people aren't in the local market. The hiring manager is spending too much time. They're wasting time and resources interviewing the wrong candidates. They're looking in the wrong places for candidates. ZipRecruiter isn't getting the job done, whatever. They're posting on their website. Nobody's seeing that. There's a low response rate when the internal TA team actually reaches out to people. They're working with a recruiting agency, but that recruiting agency is damaging their reputation with candidates because of the way they're approaching things. They already spent money on an agency, didn't get the results, and so now they think that agency recruiting doesn't work at all. They're working with multiple firms, and so candidates are getting annoyed because they're hearing about the same role. They're too many interviews on the hiring manager's plate. They don't know how to get in touch with passive candidates. I'm only a third of the way through this list, but I think that makes the point. This is all one problem that a company has that would make them want to reach out to a recruiter or work with a recruiter. We need to find an employee that we can't find on their own. There are literally dozens of kind of sub problems when you really break into what does it take for you as a recruiter to actually go find the person that your clients want to hire and then get them across the finish line. There's problems with sourcing and identifying the talent. There's problems with actually attracting the talent. Not every type of candidate wants to talk to a recruiter or wants to go on an interview when they're not actively seeking jobs. There's problems with making a strong offer. There's problems with retention. There's problems with the interview process. There's problems with the way you communicate with the recruiter. There's so many things that you as a recruiter bring value to your clients that go, they're not they're deeper and they're more specific than just the basic I can help find you a candidate. The I can help find you a candidate is a commodity at this point, but your is specific experience for how you solve each of those sub problems and be your ability to relate each of those sub problems to your client's business really does set you apart from the generic recruiter who's like, I made 100 placements last year, and but there's not much more detail than that.
Well, there's, and I'll start with that last point you just made. Of as a reminder, if you haven't heard us speak before, or Ross or myself speak before, be very careful if you post for other recruiters, right? The look at my business, look at my placements, look at how much money I've made, right? That's for other recruiters. And then if you're just being kind of a candidate advocate, you're only getting, more candidates. And so we have some clients that want to drive more candidate, typically civil engineering, legal, some areas of healthcare, accounting and finance, right? That if you want to push more candidate conversion, right, that's fine. But if you're looking for hiring managers, business development, you got to speak to the problems of the hiring managers and not falling into the traps. Now, I'm going to build off of that by saying, because of, we touched on the algorithm a little bit, LinkedIn is being this kind of just basically kind of like everything with text and a lot of stuff just in general, they're trying to figure out probably what's AI and what's not AI. Now, LinkedIn is also very imperfect. If you try to use Sales Navigator or Recruiter or any one of their tools, they mess up a bunch of stuff. I know the RPS Plus with like AI sourcing is kind of a joke right now. And so they are not super on it, right? So they kind of just like blanket everything of like, or paint with a broad brush of like, this is AI or this, or whatever that looks like. So you want to focus on the problems. You want to be that niche, that market mastery expert is doing very well on LinkedIn, right? They want to promote people that know what they're talking about in their space. So the algorithm is rewarding that. We are starting to mix and do more with some personal posts with clients. It's still only about 10%, 10-15% of the monthly strategy, but we're sprinkling a little bit more because people just in general, all of us are getting bombarded with so much AI text that you do want to go back to making sure you're humanizing yourself a little bit and just establishing that connection once a week or once every other week with your reader, with your audience, right? And make at least one of those posts featured along with some of the problem solving posts that you have, right? Making those featured, making sure you're updating the about section with your results on there. And those results are ones that your ideal market wants to see and resonate with, right? So that's key. So that the about section, the featured, add a little bit more personal. I'd say the last thing that we're doing, or we're basically mandating across the board this year with our done for you clients, is creating more lead magnets. But lead magnets not for the wide consumption that's like, hey, comment here, because a lot of times, let's say candidates don't want to comment on a post and say, yeah, I want to learn more about how to raise my salary and increase my negotiations. Like, they're not going to comment on that publicly. So then you have to do, hey, the link is in the comments, right? Or DM me if you want the link, and then they'll DM you, right? Or check out my featured section. So you got to know when to do more of a public call to action, and a call to action needs to kind of hit more in the DMs. But have that, because you can convert into the lead magnet, you can capture their email, you're capturing interest, you're getting them to raise their hand that they're interested in that topic. So your lead magnet needs to be around something that they actually care about and that's valuable to them. So for civil engineers, it's been, hey, here's how to make sure you get your PE as your civil, or if you're year 3 or year 5 in or year 10 in, this is what your compensation could be, or how the conversation, about raises and all that should go in the market, right? Or when to talk to a recruiter, right? Something that someone would want. On the business development side, we've created, hey, if you're a clinic director, here's how to hire a physical therapist in 2026, because it is a nightmare for these clinics to hire a physical therapist. So you got to create something they actually care about. You basically give them the lay of the land. You're like, if you want to talk more about this, like, let's talk. Right? Because you're betting on the fact that they don't have the time or the expertise or the understanding to do it, or they just want help, right? A lot of companies know what needs to get done, but Ross, to your point before, they just want to know that you get it, that you're going to put in the work, you're going to show up, that you get the industry, and that like you get it. And it's like, okay, now the fee's worth it, because like I'm willing to pay a fee if someone's not going to waste my time, is actually going to come through because I can't figure it out. Right? So you have to like really walk yourself through what's the journey a manager is going to take to get them to say that sentence. Right? Then they can become an inbound lead.
Yeah. Yeah. When you and I were talking about this a couple weeks ago, and I think you said the biggest problem that you solve, or the biggest reason why a hiring manager would work with a recruiter, then we make a document or whatever the format ends up being of a lead
Yep.
magnet to kind of help that person think through the decisions on their own. Maybe some really DIY oriented people will try to do this themselves. Good for them. They were probably not going to become a client anyway. But the people who are actually evaluating, is this recruiter going to be worth a $25,000 fee? Showing your thinking for like in detail how you solve the problem, you get their attention with the LinkedIn post. And then a lead magnet is a really good way of going a lot deeper because you don't have the time to do it on the LinkedIn feed, but giving
Yeah.
people a resource that shows that you understand what you're talking about. If you're a chef, this is your cookbook. Proving to people that you know your craft and that you can do it for them.
I mean, that's a great way to put it, right? I mean, that is the cookbook, the recipes, and if you want put all together, come to the restaurant or have this do an event for you, right? It's obviously going to cost a little bit different. And
Mm-hmm.
so many recruiters waste time on people that were never going to buy or are looking for ways not to buy from them. And this is a way to curate and really get people to reveal, hey, I'm a potential buyer either right now or down the road, right? And that's okay. And I think that's unusual and uncomfortable for some people to kind of sit in there with that pipeline. I get a lot of people like, well, what do I say? What do I reach out? And sometimes the answer is like, reach out in 6 weeks, in 4 weeks. If they just posted a job, comment, like the post, comment for reach, maybe shoot them a quick message and, hey, good luck on the search and everything else. But assume that they're going to try to fill that on their own. Right. But you have to have the patience and the discipline to kind of follow up when the timing is appropriate. And we have AI and tools and everything else and content. It's really about building, yes, the awareness, the conversion, getting people to raise their hand of there could be an interested prospect here. And you can build a full pipeline through content, through who's viewing your profile, who's liking, commenting, and we can track all that stuff, right? We do track all that stuff for clients of like who's liking, commenting the most that matches a really high ICP score, right? For them, you can bubble that up with all the tools and then get in there and have a human follow-up, right? And do maybe a deep research with AI to have, even prepare yourself even better for a human follow-up. And that's the journey to content. You fixed your profile, have targeted outreach, content that resonates, right? And then a personalized follow-up with the people that are engaging and raising their hand. That's it over and over and over again. And so if you kind of get overwhelmed or kind of doing too many other things, like go back down to that funnel. It works on LinkedIn. Like it's full of lurkers, right? But it's full of people and hiring managers that are waiting on you to take the right approach and have enough sense in this day and age to know how to stand apart, how to start the conversation and reduce that friction, eliminate that friction from transactional to actually want to have a conversation with this recruiter, right? And there's a lot of steps there, and some people listening have that already dialed in. Some people don't. Some people kind of working through it, right? That's where we can help. We can help either through Digital Recruiter Academy, which starts at $99 a month. We can help from one-on-one consulting to creating content that's going to drive more of that. It's going to reduce the friction with your market, make them more responsive to you. Right? There's so many different ways. So if you're kind of stuck anywhere along that, like reach out for help. The school community is free to sign up for, right? It costs $99 a month to even work with us and be on calls with us, right? It's nothing to get started, and you're only doing yourself a disservice if you're not getting in the game to try to become better at this, because the unlock, the before and after, and once it clicks, that's what you can basically do 500K a year on autopilot, right? And add a few hundred thousand a year every year from LinkedIn, almost on autopilot once you really click and internalize the approach and what's working with the hiring managers in your market.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. I think every recruiter I talk to has the stories in their head that would bring them business if they knew how to tell them
Yeah.
appropriately, how to get them out there often enough and in the right ways, and what to do with the people who pay attention to those stories. That's really what we do for our clients. There's a lot of details to it, but fundamentally, tell the stories, tell them in the way that's going to get the right person's attention, and then know what to do once you have that attention. And that's the game.
That's it. That's it. So we'll wrap this up for now. But this is good. We'll have to keep breaking down some of these topics. I think this is just like a good reminder, a good refresher, because I don't think you and I have recorded for 2.5 years on something
Yeah.
like this. So we're in it. I mean, we're running boot camps, sold out boot camps for June with franchise partners, and there's a lot of thirst for learning and figuring out LinkedIn still. And I would say it's still about the fundamentals and that targeted list building. I mean, even using Sales Navigator, strategic LinkedIn automation tools. There's some great ones now, even for $49 a month. It doesn't have to cost you more than 150, $160 a month to get the most out of LinkedIn, especially with some good organic content. I'm getting messages and emails and texts every week from clients that are getting inbound leads still. So it's very doable. It's very possible. And Q2 has been a very good quarter for hiring in agency recruiting hiring. So there's stuff out there, right? But people have laid the groundwork for months, for weeks, months, years, even to have the fruits of that labor. So again, there's no better time to start than right now, and doing it the right way than right now. So if you need the extra support, come hit us up. Shoot us a message on LinkedIn. Come find us in the digital recruiter community in school. At school.com, SKOOL.com. Until next time, happy hunting, y'all.